All right, we're going to start here in a second. We got a full house. That's awesome. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a developer track. We've got an awesome talk for you right now coming up. This is the new responsive web, not the old responsive web. This is the new responsive web. Rigel Benton, let's give him a round of applause for coming on. Rigel is the lead product designer at Eighth Wall. Thank you, Rigel, for coming and sharing your wisdom with us.
Great, thank you. So let me just start by saying how happy I am to see everyone again in person. This has been an incredible first few hours of coming back to my favorite conference. So my name's Rigel Benton. I am the lead product designer at Eighth Wall. I'm here to talk about sort of our philosophy around the web, but also what our announcement means that you may have caught earlier. So if you're coming from the main stage, you may have caught the announcement that Eighth Wall has an all-new reality engine. So this is actually upgrading and replacing our AR engine that has run on the web and continues to offer great features such as SLAM in the browser, image targets, face effects, curved image targets. I could go on. But that's not what this one's about, right? So this is about the future, and the future that started today for us. So let's just jump into sort of the history of the responsive web, and this factors into what I'm going to showcase. So it started off sort of way back in 2001 when Razorfish developed the first sort of responsive website before really anyone knew terminology around this for Audi. And this was important because it changed its dimensions based off the size of your screen. But this is still pre-mobile. And in 2010, web designer Ethan Marcotte coined responsive web design as a solution or really a design philosophy around solving for both mobile screen sizes all the way up to large desktop screens. And sort of today, we're kind of we've taken a long look at and been inspired by the thought process around these terminology, or these terms, and applied it to our new reality engine and sort of all the core principles of how it works. So back in 2010, or actually even before that, when the iPhone first launched in 2007, a major feature that Steve Jobs announced on stage was it was a revolutionary internet device. And what that meant was that you could browse desktop sites on an iPhone, which again seems kind of crazy now because like your iPhone is, well, the screens are getting bigger, but it's still quite small to browse a desktop site. But what did that do? It brought this compatibility layer to the internet that then was a forcing function to get developers and designers to embrace this new form factor. And with the advent of the iPad, now there was a third screen form factor at play, and we couldn't just think of it as mobile versus desktop, and instead, content had to flow and become fluid to fit the confines of the space it was occupying. And so here's a quote where he's kind of asking this obvious question at the time, which is like, do we use query or media queries to design specific, or sorry, not media queries. What does he say? User agents. Like, do we use user agent strings to target specific devices? It's like, no, that's impossible. There's just too many devices to keep up with. But today, we face a similar challenge with all of these new devices and form factors that are coming online, right? Totally new device categories, everything from VR HMDs to AR HMDs, but also things like Looking Glass, and of course, desktop isn't going anywhere. Mobile phones continue to persist as like the world's #1 website, or operating platform. And so, whenever we're thinking about what does the next generation of the web look like, we have to accommodate all of these new devices, and they have to be responsive by default, right? All of your content has to do that same thing that it was doing in XZ or in XY space. It has to also do that in Z space now. So, this original vision for the responsive web was architected to handle various screen sizes, but it also handled various input methods, right? So if you're using a mouse and keyboard, the carousel on your website also has to work with swipe gestures. And how do you engineer these things, but also how you design a system that just works like that, right? And so this was a lot of the effort that was put into this. And we are now living in a time where these ideas have fully matured, and now when we go to most websites, they just work, right? And that is sort of what we're tackling here with reality content at Eighth Wall. Okay, so I have a video to show real quick. It kind of sets all this up. Thanks. So Reality Engine, what does it do? Well, the Reality Engine allows you to build a web-based augmented reality project, so just a web AR project that you're already typically used to building with Eighth Wall. And then whenever you publish it and you deploy it, it automatically conforms to all of these different formats, input methods, and all of that stuff. So, because of the way that our system works, this was actually an engine update. So all of our live commercial projects that are out that were on the previous version of our engine, they now work in VR. They actually now work on desktop if they opt into that, and they work on HoloLens or other AR HMDs. And this is a big deal because it means that of the projects that are being developed right now, there's already they get for free all of these new form factors and input methods. And this is important to our philosophy at Eighth Wall because, since the beginning, if you've been following us pre-Eighth Wall Web, we were actually we had a Unity plugin. And the whole idea behind that was emphasizing reach and accessibility and bringing mobile markerless AR to devices that didn't support ARKit, didn't support ARCore. And that has carried through to web, which was an even more accessible place to experience all of your AR content. It's easy to access, and it works in even more places because it doesn't rely on any native libraries, right? All of this computer vision code is running in a tab in your browser. And this sort of continues that journey to now support mobile web AR on all these places that aren't mobile phones. So reach is the first problem to solve when building the metaverse, and reach has always been one of the most important tenets of our business. Okay, so what does this actually look like in practice? So we have sort of separated the product out into various solutions that it's solving. So the first is the reality application runtime. Again, kind of like I mentioned, this is web AR first development, similar to mobile first development or desktop first development. The beginnings of the responsive web also followed these principles, and it just makes sense for us because we've launched over 1,200 commercial projects to date, and tens of thousands more non-commercial. And so we've learned a lot in the intervening time from our partners and development community around all the different techniques that they're using and all the different platforms they want to support and rendering frameworks. And so it makes sense to sort of start with what they already have and start with what they're already familiar with and then begin branching out from there. And so let's see. So here we go. So mobile AR first development leads to this metaversal deployment concept. So this is, being able to hit a button and then all of a sudden, depending on whichever device you've went to that same web page on, and now all of this content is just changing and modifying itself to make sense for that. And then I sort of put over in the corner here, this is our API that sort of a taste of the various ways that you can query based off of device capability what device you're on. So it isn't like you're saying if VR headset, it's rather what combination of these factors will help you understand the way the content should work. So this will allow for things like VR pass-through, maybe that works a little bit differently than like a HoloLens or a Magic Leap. And so to allow for this abstraction of targeting device categories, it should help with allowing new devices that people might be maybe not even like when they developed their website originally could not have conceived of, but now like the website just works because it follows these principles. So another one, environment mapping. So as you know, in mobile AR, typically you're not adding an environment. You can, of course, and it looks sort of like a 6DoF world that you can walk around in with your phone. But it actually makes a lot of sense to just focus on the content that you want to have in front of the user and assume that the space around the user is open for freedom of movement, right? But of course, in desktop and virtual reality, you need to have a space that can add context to your content. And so we started with a default virtual environment that we sort of internally called the void space. And the void space is automatically added to your projects. And it's meant to be sort of an agnostic, sort of unopinionated thing that draws your attention to the content itself. Now, of course, the void space is like fully customizable. You can change the colors, you can change the fog, you can add ground textures and all that stuff. But also just as easily, you can completely just turn it off or replace it with a custom environment. But sort of by default, you want to have this area that your AR content can occupy. And so next we have the spatialized UI. So this is a particularly interesting challenge. So as you know, if you've ever gone into a WebXR experience on an Oculus Quest, sorry, Meta Quest, you can enter, but then you can't see any of the content that was overlaid on top of it. This means that developers traditionally have had to design 3D UI to sort of occupy that space, but then also design 2D UI if they want it to work on these other platforms. So what we've done is actually, we've taken your 2D UI that lives on top of your immersive site, and we've brought it into the immersive session with you. So this is a panel that follows you around. You can minimize it. You can drag it around. You can, in fact, if you change the size of the window prior to entering, it respects that size, so that all these 2D elements, as you can see, are actually changing because they were built responsively. Originally, they're changing to the size of the flat screen that it occupies, and that extends into an immersive space. And as you can also see, this works with, it can receive any kind of raycast that simulates a touch gesture, so you can do touch gestures on the simulated display. And of course, developers can customize this. They can turn it off completely. They can have it minimized by default. They can reposition it so that maybe it's in front of the content whenever the user first jumps in. Maybe they want to move that out of the way. So we allow all these different affordances so that developers can just focus on the 2D experience and then feel confident that the immersive experience will match that somewhat. And then interaction mapping. So this is also a unique challenge to bringing on the new responsive web. Just like I had mentioned before with like sliding, touch interactions and mouse and keyboard sort of having to be components on the web, having to be designed both ways. So we've sort of done this by default. So multimodal input is sort of built into this by design. And you can see here I have a simple joystick component that's receiving touch gestures on the screen. It's rendering a joystick. Of course, on the desktop, you have like all these different input methods that you can tap into. And then, of course, on the right, we now are doing like hand tracking. And what's really crazy, actually, about what you're seeing on the right over here is that even though you're in 3D space, whenever you pinch and move your arm around, or you pull a trigger and move your hand around, those are actually going through a pretty sophisticated touch interaction simulation process. So there's no 3D gestural things that were written for this. It's literally simulating touch inputs. So as maybe you're looking at, let's see, I had that car example. So maybe for the car, it's like you can click and you can drag it around. It's literally, according to the website, right? You're dragging it around with your finger. If you pinch to scale the car, well, you do that intuitively in VR, by pulling your arms apart. So that's like a really important thing for us is like thinking about this is like, how can we just make sure that everything just works, right? And the more effort that gets put into that, the more surprising it becomes when you just begin browsing all of these web AR sites and they're just working. In fact, all of these ones that I'm showing you, with the exception of like in the middle here, I have a follow camera that is only attached to the character whenever you're on desktop, are like really little to no customization at all. This stuff, again, it just sort of works. But beyond just working, you can go and you can customize this as deeply as you want to. And in fact, that's the goal, right? The idea behind this is that just like that first generation iPhone Safari browser, like we want to encourage developers and designers to think about this as maybe a VR first solution, right? At some point, maybe desktop first. Maybe, maybe your experience doesn't actually make sense for desktop, but it does for VR, or it doesn't make sense for AR. Well, we want to give you the granularity to turn off things that don't make sense. Maybe you have it fall on a landing page with a video that describes what you could be experiencing if you scan this QR code or viewed it in a headset. And so this is another example here of where a portal where you walk in and you have a full 6DoF experience makes a lot of sense in an AR headset or in a mobile AR experience on a phone. But I mean, you kind of just want to be on the moon whenever you put your VR headset on. And so you can do that. And this is like 2 lines of code to make this happen. But that's not all. We have partnered with AirCards, which is an awesome a creative agency, to build a demo, or actually it's the first responsive, immersive, cross-platform web game, and it's going to be showcased at our booth tomorrow. So feel free to go check it out and experience this for yourself. It's multiplayer. It can work across HoloLens, desktop, VR, mobile, AR, all of these things, and it's meant to showcase like all the different ways you can play the same game, and how we can leverage the strengths of each platform, all the unique strengths, to make a game fun and make it work in all these different ways. And you can try this for yourself if you go to summitscrambled.com right now. And you can also customize your avatar. So in addition to AirCards, we partnered with Ready Player Me, and there's a full avatar customization process that precedes the experience. And you can customize your avatar. You can have them look like Eighth Wall or Squid Game or whatever, and then have them play against each other outside the booth as well, because you can carry this around with you and challenge your friends. Also, there's an iPad mini giveaway, so definitely check that out. And yeah, so that's what I got. But the new responsive web, I'm really excited to have been the one to like share all of these ideas with you, and I can't wait for you to go out and try our new release. Thank you.
Thank you, Rigel. We have time maybe for a couple questions. You want to go up to the mic there? Great.
Beautiful, great presentation, Rigel. Thank you so much for giving us this. Eighth Wall has allowed me to create these experiences for clients for very low cost with a lot of satisfaction. My name's Lex. I have agency White Label AR. And the one issue that a lot of clients have is for like the mobile browser, there's always the modal that says activate camera, give permission to camera. I'm sure for the Meta Quest experience, it's going to give you the little modal for like activate WebXR experience. What do you have kind of in the works for that? Or will there one day be a Eighth Wall browser?
Well, great question. So I think Eighth Wall is all about interoperability, and we support as many browsers as will have us. And but it's a good question about sort of this intelligent routing. If someone wants to deny permissions, like how does this work? One idea that you could do now is like if you wanted to deny camera or immersive session permissions, like fall back to desktop, right? Like give people what they have access to is sort of the basic idea behind this. And and I think users they'll respect that. Thanks.
Hey, This looks really awesome. I'm really impressed with what y'all have built. My question is about pricing. Is it similar to what you've had in the past, or is it shifting? Will it change depending if you're shipping VR, AR, desktop, or if you pick and choose, will that change?
Yeah, great question. Our pricing hasn't changed as a result of this. This is new functionality that we're adding on top of what we currently offer. But yeah, and if you have any questions about pricing, there's a lot of eighth wallers in the room right now that I'm sure would be happy to go deep on all the different questions you might have about that.
I had a question about the future of this, because I see these are all like isolated experiences and that you can run one at a time, but you couldn't maybe have two of those running at the same time. What do you think about, I guess, how this plays into the metaverse and having multiple things running around you at the same time?
That's really interesting. So in the Quest already, you can sort of break away tabs. One thing I didn't mention is a lot of the work, like to the demos that you saw on the screen, I actually made in VR. So I had our cloud editor open in one window in VR, and then I had the VR experience on the other side. And as I'm making changes on the left-hand side, it's hot reloading, and I'm seeing those changes implemented on the right side. We've already sort of just out of convenience, like embrace this like multi-window way of operating and browsing through experiences. Another thing that we actually just launched today as well is a Discover Hub. So all of the featured projects on our site that you can actually go and try now. So we have a ton of projects that you can go and browse through if you're curious like what gets made with eighth wall. But if a developer chooses, they can also have that as like a live demo forever. And in VR, you can actually go in there and click through all the different ones. And so, once we have like a lot of content, I'm sure as more people create things, it'll become even more important to be able to quickly access all that content. And that's a really exciting problem to solve.
Hi, Rigel.
Hi.
Two quick questions. First, you said that this is an additional feature and that all past projects should now be accessible on VR and desktop. Is there anything a developer has to do to make those accessible, like kind of republish it? Or is it just now, any customer, any user can access them on a VR headset or something like that? And the second question is, as a developer, this is amazing. We'll save tons of time if I need to develop an AR experience and a VR experience. But for companies, besides reaching more users on a variety of different devices, is there any other benefits for our company to do this route besides just more users?
Two great questions. So the first one, what projects are affected? So basically the way that we handle this is, for now, FaceFX projects and any projects that use image targets, we are sort of falling back to the landing page, which is like probably what you would expect with like the QR code to display. So this would only affect world effect projects. And in that sphere, we have, we auto update our engine we update our engine throughout the life cycle, and every time you load the page, you get the latest version of your engine. And so your projects are expected to work now in VR, but not on desktop. Desktop is an opt-in flow because lots of times people design for desktop specifically to have different landing page elements and things. But then if you want to opt out, it's like a really simple one-line change to change your allowed devices parameter on the XR Web component. Or you can always talk to us, and like we can help you on the support side with whatever specific thing you want to achieve. And then, sorry, I'm first trying to figure, what was the second question? Oh, right, the benefits. Yeah, so that's interesting, right? So responsive web, it's not like, many of us have both desktops and mobile phones, right? So it's not like a multiplicative effect that people only own VR headsets where previously they only owned mobile devices. So it's really more about accessibility and finding people where they are, as opposed to multiplying the total number of users you can reach.
I want to ask us for the export to the Meta Quest. So how how can I use the reality engine to export to VR to my headset? For example, like, will it be an app icon in the Meta Quest, or it will become a QR code? And how can user to access from the QR code on the website to the Quest?
Also, really great question. So if you caught the Meta Connect the other day, apart from changing their name, they had a bunch of other things that they announced. A few of them had to do with the Oculus browser specifically. So on the 8th Ball side, in order to get one of your projects to work, it sort of already does. But if you want to create a net new VR project, you go through all the same development flows that we already have on the website about how to get started and publish your tap to tree project or any of the other sample projects we offer. And then to view it as an icon, that's like a separate feature that they have also announced is PWA functionality for WebXR apps. And I believe right now you can actually sideload these as like PWAs housed in APKs, and that's how people can access that. But they're allowing submissions to the store and the App Lab, so that if you want to distribute your VR projects, you can go ahead and do that. And that could be an interesting way for developers to monetize their like responsive immersive content. Yeah, and then sorry, what was the second question? I'm like having really bad short-term memory.
Yeah, I kind of forgot as well. How can people use the Quest? And then if it is a QR code, I thought it's a QR code. And
Yeah.
how can you kind of scan it? Because
So-
there's like a mixed reality function.
Yeah. That's a really great question. So this is something that when we launched I keep mentioning it, landing pages, basically this customizable screen that appears in all these different places where, for whatever reason, you don't want your content to appear. So this is one of the things that it was a challenge we had to figure out is like, if you display a QR code inside a headset to get to a phone, like how does that work? So we actually created a way of using like send to messenger to basically, send the link to yourself or to a friend from that page. But to get the link into the VR headset, that's actually something that Meta just announced as well last week or whenever that was, where they're going to start rolling out an update to the iPhone and Android apps that allow for share sheet, link sharing to headsets. So that'll be much easier to get links into headsets because, that is definitely a unique challenge of the form factor. And outside of that, like I had mentioned, we have a discovery hub where you'll be able to navigate to 8thwall.com and check out all of these projects and just sort of paginate through all the different VR-ready experiences that we already have up on there, as well as our project library and our playground, where we have like over 100-something sample projects that are clonable, but also live demos that you can test yourself.
Awesome. Let's give it up for Rigel Benton at 8th Wall. Woo! Thank you.